Cindy Novak, Downsize Administrator with the Carolyn Stark Real Estate Team. Thank you so much for joining us for our Home Edition event. Today we're really happy to be able to share some terrific information with you. We've got Sergeant Matt Kuether of the Appleton Police Department, and he's going to be talking about scams that unfortunately many times target seniors. So, here with the information is Sergeant Kuether.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Matt Kuether with the Appleton Police Department. Today we're going to talk about identity theft scams and fraud and how you can protect yourself against some of these different scams that we see more commonly, and also how you can maybe identify them, and also what to do in the event that you would be victimized through one of these identity theft scams. So again, I'm Matt Kuether. I'm a detective with the Appleton Police Department. All right, so first of all, we'll talk a little bit about what identity theft is. So identity theft is the unauthorized use or attempted use of an existing account that you may already have open. The unauthorized use or attempted use of your personal information to open a new account or obtain a credit card, things along those lines. And also just any other misuse of your personal information for fraudulent purposes. We'll see a lot of different stuff where people may open a social media account or things like that in an attempt to maybe attack someone's character, things of that nature as well. So as far as what the overall impact of identity theft and fraud is, a 2017 study found that $16 billion were stolen from about 15.5 million people. And also the year prior was 15.3 billion from over 13 million people. In the past 6 years, identity thieves have stolen over $107 billion. And approximately 60% of the victims of these identity theft scams and fraud are aged 50 or older. So it's definitely a trend that we see that it targets elderly victims or older victims. So one of the challenges with identity theft and some of these scams from our standpoint and also from a victim standpoint and protecting yourself is that the people perpetrating the scams are always getting smarter. They're always evolving. Technology is constantly changing, and the world is constantly changing. So there's always new ways essentially to maybe make little changes to a scam or a scheme that's been going on and make it new and begin targeting people with it. So some of the things that we'll see as far as being able to get the personal identifying information, phishing, which is an attempt to obtain sensitive information like usernames, passwords, credit card information, by essentially making something look like it's a legitimate electronic communication. So you may get an email that looks legitimate, it has a link in it, and when you click that link, it may have some kind of virus or something like that that allows someone to access information on your computer, like your personal information. Another way, obviously, for someone to gather your personal information would be by stealing your wallet, purse, mail, your cell phone. A lot of people store different things on there, so we want to make sure that we are protecting ourselves just from a general theft issue and what could come down the line if certain documents or things are stolen and obtained. People could go through your garbage. If you throw financial statements and things like that just out in your general garbage, that could be obtained that way. Skimming devices, if you're unsure what those are, one of the most common ones we'll see is it's basically a small device that can be put over the credit card reader at like a gas station. And a lot of times we'll see it maybe on a day or two before a holiday weekend or a long weekend where banks are going to be closed. And then when people use their credit card at that pump or for the gas station example, then that skimmer that they put on there is going to obtain the information off of the magnetic strip, which is going to be the credit card information that they need to be able to access that account and make charges to that account. And we'll see people then rewriting a credit card with their actual name on it, and they go around and they can make all these purchases. And that way if someone checks their ID matches the name on the card, and they don't have an issue. And we'll talk more about some examples of those things later. Obviously, with how much information and shopping and all of that stuff is done online and stored in electronic means, even if you shopped at a store, a lot of that purchase information is stored by those companies in electronic ways. So you can have a data breach. We've certainly all seen news stories where maybe even hundreds of millions of customers across the world may be impacted. Millions of client information gets released. And then if you've shopped at that store or used that company's resources in that time frame, it may be a little bit of a waiting game to see if your information gets used or how that may have impacted you personally. Also, it's possible that people could just find your personal information laying around in your house, in your car, depending on maybe if, reasons you may have people over or other people you may have in your car if you do any kind of driving service like an Uber or things like that. Or also just overhearing conversations you may have with someone at a bank, things like that, and just watching as you fill out paperwork or things like that too if you're somewhere where you're dealing with that sensitive information. So we'll go over some of the top scams that we see targeting seniors and elderly. Again, it's certainly not encompassing of everything, but again, just the goal here is to give you an idea of stuff that's out there and really just make you aware of it so that hopefully if anyone tries to target you in a scam that you're able to recognize, that there may be something up here and to take a break and look into it a little bit further. So one is a Medicare or a health insurance scam. People may pose as a Medicare representative in order to get people to give them their personal information. Obviously, Medicare is something that becomes available to you at an older age, and so that's clearly why that group is targeted. And it's also, with health insurance costs and things like that, it's an extremely valuable resource and insurance package for someone who's on it, and that's why it's kind of a good thing from a scammer's perspective to attack, because nobody would want to see their health insurance coverage or things like that have a lapse or be canceled. So again, that's one of the reasons why that may be targeted, because you really don't want that to happen, to have a lapse or anything like that. So you're going to be more apt to provide that information on short notice to avoid any kind of lapse in coverage. There also may be like what appears to be maybe a mobile clinic offering Medicare services to a senior, and then they'll get your personal information, get your insurance information, and bill Medicare, but pocket the money because they're not providing any actual medical service or real service. Counterfeit prescription drugs is another common practice. Generally, it takes place on the internet. Again, we talk about advancing technology and now the ability to get your prescriptions through some of these online forums. There's kiosks to get prescriptions, things like that. So on the internet, you can be ordering prescription medications, but they're not really what you think they are. So essentially, you're paying money for something that's not treating what you want it to treat. But perhaps more concerningly is you're getting a substance that isn't what you intend to put inside your body. And obviously, if it's not legitimately through a pharmacy, you have no idea what that substance might be or how it may impact your body, because obviously you haven't consulted with anyone over what that would look like for you. So that's a big risk from both the financial side and also just your personal well-being. You may see another kind of scam is a funeral or a cemetery scam. So a perpetrator may read an obituary and then attend a funeral and approach family members or a widow or widower and talk about some unsettled fictitious debt that they may have had with the deceased. Again, the idea is going to be to put pressure to get that debt settled, and in a time of grief, and obviously processing through a lot of other things that happen when a loved one is passed, that's a vulnerable moment for individuals. There's also a chance that a disreputable funeral home may inflate charges if someone's unfamiliar with funeral costs, and if all of those things aren't planned out in advance through a will or some kind of other end-of-life documents, then some of those bills may be way inflated because you don't know and you just are trying to get things taken care of. And again, a lot on your mind and a lot of pressure, and it might end up costing you extra money for no reason. Today's day and age, again, fraudulent anti-aging products, essentially offering fake treatments, which may potentially be harmful depending on what they are, or just completely useless from either hurting or helping you. Just a completely useless product that does nothing, but probably comes at a pretty substantial cost to believe that it's going to help you, look, feel, behave younger, things like that. There's investment schemes, so pyramid or inheritance schemes that are targeted at seniors looking to safeguard their cash. So again, a scheme that is essentially taking advantage of your desire to protect your financial security while it's ultimately going to be damaging to it. This is the kind that I would say everyone has probably at least been somewhat subjected to. I know I will get phone calls on my work phone, on my personal phone, all different times of day from all different places. So telemarketing and phone scams are very common. They're also very difficult to trace in today's, again, technological world. People can go and they can spoof phone numbers. You'll hear in some of the examples, you can go up on the internet and set up to have your phone number show up on someone's caller ID as a police department, local police department phone number, or some other business's phone number, even though it's not really calling from that location or from that account. But you can still spoof things to make it appear that way, and again, trying to gain legitimacy for your scam. And that's why those things become very difficult for us to trace back, because a lot of it's internet-based and it can tie overseas, and there are only so many resources to pursue those investigative leads. So a couple kinds of examples that we have here. The scammer may tell the victim that there's a large sum of money and they'll share it with the victim as long as they can make a good faith payment by withdrawing some funds from their own account. It can also involve a second person further in the scheme by posing as a trusted, like a bank worker or a lawyer, things like that. Again, trying to add legitimacy so that you believe what's going on. A scammer may also call and attempt to get a victim to wire or send money on the belief that their child, grandchild, or other relative is in hospital or jail and needs money. So again, they're trying to create urgency, trying to create fear and panic so that essentially a person acts without thinking or acts without investigating further what's going on. Because again, who wouldn't want to do something to help their family at a time of need? They also may solicit money for fake charities, and you'll see a lot of this after a natural disaster. I would also point out, now we have everything going on with COVID, and we also have, all this talk of direct payments from the government, like IRS stimulus checks and things like that. So it's a very easy thing for someone to come up with an idea to call and say, well, too much money was deposited in your account, so we're going to need some of that back. Or if you haven't received your deposit yet, we have it available, we just need to confirm your account information. Maybe there was a problem with the deposit, so we need you to confirm your information that we have with the IRS so that we can get you that payment. And again, that's all very relevant and current news, and there are a lot of people who are very in need of those resources right now to keep things going during the pandemic. So it's again targeting something that feels very legitimate and is going on out there, but just because it's going on out there, that doesn't make the scam that they're doing legitimate. So internet fraud, pop-up browser windows simulating a virus scanning or some other computer program, and when you click on it, it either downloads essentially nothing, a fake program, but you pay for it, which is obviously fraudulent. And then the other risk is that it's an actual virus, which can allow the scammer to access information on the computer, like we talked about earlier with some of that phishing, which is what you see right underneath. So again, receiving emails from something that appears to be legitimate. I know I've seen like a Netflix, so they'll send an email looks just like a Netflix email, has the Netflix logo in it, and says, essentially, we need you to click on the link below and confirm all of your account information, so that your payments and service can continue uninterrupted. If you ever get something like that, we'll talk more about other things, but go out and seek that out on your own. So delete that email. Don't click on any links in that email, and you can just as easily navigate your own way to whatever account it may be and log in and confirm that your information is correct and accurate. So those are just little things that you can still take that information, and on the off chance it's legitimately from the company, you can navigate your own way to solving that problem as opposed to having to go through the email or the link that's sent to you. Homeowner and reverse mortgage scams. So in this situation where you'll see seniors targeted is because in a lot of situations, the older you are, the more likely you are to have your home paid off, and it's an extremely valuable asset, which is why it's a great target for a scammer. You may see fake letters get sent out that appear to be from a local assessor's office and maybe offering to arrange for a reassessment and lowering your tax burden. Again, if potentially you're in a situation where you're on a fixed income, looking to retire, just generally I think everybody would pay lower taxes if given the opportunity. So it's something, for a fee you pay to have this done, but it's not actually, being done with the true assessor's office. Older adults also may be taken advantage of if they've done a reverse mortgage or some kind of way to essentially unlock the equity that they have in their homes. And if you're considering doing something like that, then the big question that we would ask you essentially to ask yourself is why? What's the reason? Who's asking you to do it? And what's the purpose for it? And who's going to benefit from you doing it? If it's something you're doing that's very intentional, then that's one thing. Otherwise, a home repair company may come and offer whatever service, whether it's legitimate or not, at some inflated cost, and whether or not that's really something that needs to be done or something that you would need to take a second mortgage or reverse mortgage or those things out for, are all things you should slow down and be essentially checking those boxes that you're looking through to make sure it's a worthwhile project. Another very common one through the internet and phone, and that is sweepstakes and lottery scams. So a scammer will tell the victim they've won a lottery or sweepstakes or some large sum of prize money, and they need to make a payment in order to unlock or access that prize money. So a lot of times we'll see where seniors are sent a check to go and cash in their bank, and then a lot of times they may send money back, or again, they'll just put that in their bank and then the money will get withdrawn from their account. But essentially the problem for the victim is that money shows up in your account immediately or very near immediately, but it may take longer than that to determine that the check is fraudulent and that the funds actually aren't backed anywhere. And then you're going to be on the hook for that. So again, we'll see that money withdrawn, we'll get bank records, and we'll see the money come out shortly after it's put in. And then generally the other funds that someone had in the account are withdrawn at the same time or shortly thereafter. Another one, obviously, by being a grandparent scam that targets seniors, place a call to an older person, and when the victim picks up, the scammer will say something along the lines of, "Hi, Grandma, do you know who this is?" When someone responds to that and says, "Well, this sounds like, whichever grandchild you feel it sounds like, male or female voice, then they just go along with it and take on that identity without actually having to have done any homework on who your grandkids are, things like that. And on the off chance they call someone who doesn't have any grandkids that hangs up on them, there's nothing lost for them. They just keep moving. So again, then the next step after they've gotten to that point is to ask for money to solve some unexpected financial problem, usually through some kind of money, wire or transfer. And some of those don't require an ID to collect, so that's why it's a preferred method for someone doing fraudulent things. may tell you or a grandparent, just don't tell my parents, they'd kill me. Well, of course, they don't want you to reach out to anyone, because then you're going to find out that it's not true, that so-and-so's not in jail, so-and-so's not been in a car accident, and they're not having any of these issues. So I think now what we'll do is I have several examples from across the country. I didn't put anything in the slides for them, but I want to just go over just some of the differences in the way the scams are and things like that. But again, we have local examples. We have examples from all over the country. And I think it's just important for everyone to understand kind of how little things can be changed, or some of the different methods that you'll see that we talked about. So there was a December of 2019 information here that a victim of a computer virus scam using a company that sounded like a technological company, and the victim allowed remote access to her computer and her bank account, and then she also mailed $5,000 in cash to a person in another state, and purchased numerous gift cards from local department stores, and then provided those numbers to the scammers through phone calls and text messages so that they could use those gift cards. The gift card information that was given was then used almost immediately by different people in Texas and California. So again, just to show how and the victim wasn't in either one of those states. So it truly is something that's, that's why it's so hard to trace and so hard to follow up on. Another one, an elderly victim was contacted by a computer support company that scammed the victim into purchasing Walmart gift cards and providing the gift card numbers to the suspects. Someone was contacted by an unrecognized phone number, and the person on the phone stated they were with AT&T. Told the victim that they would be receiving $330 into their account due to years' worth of being charged for services that were no longer in existence. Again, sounds like something that a company would do if they caught up on and customer service. So they had the person log into their computer and do certain things so that the computer could be remotely accessed to complete depositing the money. Also, through that, the scammers were able to get the victim to access and sign into an online banking account, and also eventually told the victim to go out and get gift cards for local department stores and load money onto them. The scammers in this instance even convinced the victim to stay on the phone and instructed what to say and things like that, and buying the gift cards while it's still on the phone with the scammers. The victim got home and found the computer screen was a blank screen that just said type here, and then did a little bit more on the computer, and then it just turned into a live stream of the victim on the computer, and at that point is when the victim contacted the police department about that issue. Another example here of someone who approached a victim and claimed to be from a local HVAC company in order to gain entry into someone's home, saying that they were going to service the furnace. And then while in the home, they would either strong arm or pressure or fool an elderly homeowner into writing a large check for a service that was never rendered. So again, that's where we talk about. There's also another one that we see commonly in the area here is resurfacing a driveway. So someone will just show up, go up and talk to someone, say we're going to resurface the driveway, need this payment, and it never happens. So again, when those things take place, don't give people money, don't give people personal information. If they have a flyer or something like that, if it's a legitimate business, then you can get that and you can do some research, and you can always reinitiate contact if it's a service that you would like to have completed. Situation here where a victim received a call from a person who they thought was their grandson, stated they'd been arrested in another state for a DUI, and female passenger had been injured in an accident. Then received a phone call from a person with a fake name and identified themselves as the grandson's lawyer and convinced this person to send $6,000 in cash for bond for the grandson. And the cash was sent via FedEx. And then ultimately, again, these are set up so that the money or whatever can be retrieved in a way that isn't exposing the suspect to being caught. Here's a situation where an 80-year-old received a phone call from somebody claiming to be with Social Security and that her Social Security card had been found in a drug raid, and in order to protect her money and property, she needed to mail cash and gift cards so that this person could protect her assets. Ended up mailing this to a different state, and then eventually realized had fallen subject to a scam. Another situation where a suspect impersonating an FBI agent demanded $10,000 in Target gift cards to take care of federal warrants for someone. Another Social Security Administration scam where the suspect convinced the victim that the suspect worked for the federal government and was dealing with a drug investigation related to a car that was rented in another state a few weeks prior. Also then involved another person who represented themselves as a police officer from that local jurisdiction and convinced the victim to purchase $15,000 in gift cards and provide the information. And in this one, again, coached on what to say if they were questioned about what they were doing. Another example of an elderly victim receiving calls from an unknown subject posing as a Social Security Administration representative, and also someone posing as a DEA agent, stating that their Social Security benefits would be canceled, and the DEA issued a warrant and was convinced to withdraw $25,000 in cash and mail it via FedEx overnight to solve the issue. So again, I know we're going through a lot of examples, but part of the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you to understand just how prevalent this is. And these are all essentially within the last year that these are coming through, and obviously don't come close to totaling everything, but just how common it is for people to be scammed. Another one where their Treasury Department scam, where the victim is told their Social Security number is being used by illegal citizens, and it involved purchasing gift cards in order to fix that issue. Another one, elderly couple received a phone call from scammers who indicated their Social Security number was compromised and they needed to send money to get a new Social Security number. In this one, the scammers were stated they were working with a local police department and spoofed their number to look like it was coming from the real police department on their cell phone, and that's part of why they believed it. Also sent pictures of their gift cards to the scammers and lost $7,000. Another one where someone was told that they had won a lottery in the amount of $10 million. And their entry in the lottery was based on magazine subscriptions and credit card usage, but told that prior to getting the winnings would have to pay the taxes and some other administrative fees. When the victim told the people that they didn't have enough money to cover those, then the suspects began talking about other ways that they could get more money in addition to what they had so that they could access their winnings. Ended up getting a lot of money cards, like One Vanilla money cards, and also got a cash advance and a title loan against the victim's car in order to send all this money, and it also accessed an IRA. So essentially, then the victim ended up being out $58,000 before identifying that this was a scam and there was no lottery or winnings. Another one, very similar, convinced someone to pay in excess of $100,000 of pre-tax fees for winning millions in a publisher clearinghouse sweepstakes. Another publisher's clearinghouse scam, where the Amazon gift cards in various amounts and money orders, along with brand new activated cell phones being sent out in order to access the winnings. Another one where someone was communicating through some online and social media type things with someone in Africa. And ultimately, through all of that contact, the suspect was able to gain personal information and ordered phones to be shipped to the victim's house. And then the victim was instructed to mail those to the suspects. So again, those are some of the examples. Fraudsters and scammers are targeting elderly because of the belief that there's a higher chance that they may be lonely, willing to listen, and more trusting, perhaps, due to their situations. So the best example, or best advice, I'm sorry, that we can give when you look at the current slide here is, the IRS is suing you, you won the lottery, Microsoft's calling, you have a family member in jail, hang the phone up. Don't find out more. Don't see what's going on. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The odds of winning the lottery, if you play it, are really small. The odds of winning a lottery you unknowingly entered, it's extremely unlikely. I can't imagine that scenario. And just never provide sensitive personal information over the telephone. With the one exception being you initiating a phone call. If you call your doctor's office, if you call your credit card company, and then obviously you're going to have to provide some of that information to talk to a customer service representative. Those are different situations. If you get one of these calls and you hang up and you're concerned, then go and seek out your own way of contacting those companies and reach out and say, hey, I got this call. Is this true? Is there anything to this? Don't just call back, obviously, the number that you maybe got called on. So again, things you can do to protect yourself. Be really mindful about who you give your personal information to and whether or not that situation really would require you to give out your personal information. Again, consider this in phone, in the mail, via the internet. Just really, unless you are initiating a contact, there's no reason an unexpected contact should lead to you giving out your personal information. Don't carry personal information with you that you don't need to have with you. Again, it's very easy for you to, even if you just accidentally leave your purse or wallet somewhere, falls out of your pocket, in your vehicle and someone breaks into your vehicle, social security card, passport, PIN numbers, and checks, all of those things should be kept somewhere, and only basically accessed if you need them. Don't leave personal or financial information out in the open. 20% of these situations, the victim and the suspect know each other. Family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, a caregiver or a housekeeper, someone who comes over to clean, including hotels. I've certainly had cases where someone had a checkbook in a hotel room and housekeeping came through and takes a couple of checks out of the back of the stack and nobody realized it for a while. And then they're able to use those checks to sometimes create other checks or access the account information that's present on the check. So even at your house, with the holidays or any other gatherings, just put all of those things away. You never know what someone else in your family may even privately be going through and be at a point where they're so desperate that taking advantage of a family member isn't out of the question. We'd all like to hope that that would never happen, but again, just keeping your things tucked away is a pretty easy step to take to ensure that it can't happen. Be cognizant of things that you put in your mailbox. We are actually seeing an increase in theft of mail. So if you pay bills via check by mail, the best advice that I can give you is to go to the post office and mail that directly from the post office. Don't leave that out in your mailbox with the flag up for hours on end where someone could come along and take those bills and then take the checks out of them and use those to lead to you being a fraud victim. Also be aware of public use computers. If you go to the library, I would strongly urge against accessing your bank account at the library or any other public use computer, just in case somehow you accidentally click something or that browser would, for whatever reason, store your login information, things like that, or that's the situation we talked about earlier with someone watching over your shoulder, maybe being able to see what buttons you're hitting in order to log in. Again, it's very easy to use a phone and just hold it like this, and you may be able to record what button someone's typing and go back and watch it slowly. So Again, on a public use computer, don't do those things. Make sure you're doing those things when you're on your own and on your own device, or somewhere where there's privacy. Make sure that you are properly destroying anything that has personal financial information on it, or I guess just personally identifying information. Shred your financial statements, bank statements, credit cards, applications, old credit cards, old ID cards, things of that nature, so that they can't be out there being used fraudulently against you. And also be mindful that of like the shredder that you use one that essentially shreds it into confetti that would be essentially impossible to recreate the documents versus something that just shreds it into, however many strips, and you could piece that back together and still read it if someone was motivated enough. So things to watch out for, obviously these are going to sound a lot like the examples that we went through, but that's why we give real life examples. So phone call or an email from someone asking you for money or your personal information. Again, if you get an unexpected contact asking for that information, don't give it to someone. You can end that conversation and go take your own route to contacting that person or company that they are purporting themselves to be, and you can follow up on that and take care of it on your own if it needs to happen. An offer in an email that sounds too good to be true. Again, the likelihood of someone emailing you a giant fortune or your big break are very small. Again, an email or a call from someone you don't know about a product you've never heard of or a company you've never dealt with. An email or text messages that ask you to click or links or download software. Again, don't click those links. Once you click those links, that's usually when the damage is done. Opening the email or clicking on the email to look at it is one thing. Clicking on any links within the email is where that information is going to start to be vulnerable. An email or a text message from someone or a company that is unlikely to make personal contact. The example here is Microsoft. They're not going to call everyone who has Windows to tell them that they've identified a problem with Windows. There is some other means that is far more feasible for a company of that size to reach millions of users. So please be aware of, well, why would they do that? Why would they call me personally to tell me about this issue with my computer? And again, emails that contain suspicious attachments, which the email itself should be suspicious, and then again, the attachment. Even if it's an email from someone claiming to be family, if it feels a little weird or it's not something you're expecting, give that family member a call. Reach out to them through some other means and say, hey, did you send me this email? Just to confirm, and then if they did, certainly move forward with it. Again, the whole purpose of this presentation, be proactive, not reactive. Use creative passwords for your accounts. Change them if it needs to be changed. If you have any concern that it may have been compromised, just change it. Make photocopies of important documents, social security cards, credit cards, driver's license. Keep them in a safe place. On the off chance your wallet gets stolen and you can't remember everything that you had in there or every account that maybe you had in there, you can go back to copies you had and make sure that you close all the accounts that you need to and are protecting your information. Consider using online banking, if you're not already doing so, as a way to more effectively monitor your bank account. Bank statements, if you get paper statements still, you're talking once a month at best that they're going to be coming through, and a lot can happen in a month for you to open up that statement and see fraudulent activity or that your bank account has been drained. With online banking, you can very easily check it daily, every couple days, even weekly, whatever works for you, where you'd be able to catch some type of fraudulent activity in a much quicker manner, so you can notify the bank and begin protecting your assets. You can and should check your credit report annually. There's information on a slide here for you to do that. The companies are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, and you are allowed to request a credit report from each company for free once a year. So I guess the best way to space that out is if you request one from each company every 4 months, then every 4 months you would be getting your credit report and be able to monitor that for any kind of suspicious activity or fraudulent activity. So even though we can be aware of it, we can watch for it, there are still ways that you could be victimized. Again, we talk about the data breaches and things like that. So if something happens, if you fall victim to a phone scam, any other scam, what do we do? What's the next step? First of all, another reason why we go through all of those examples, don't be afraid or embarrassed. Talk to someone you trust. Contact your kids, family members, the police department. Contact someone you trust and talk to them about the situation. You're not alone. There's plenty of folks out there that can help you through the community and other services. And also keep handy the phone numbers that you would use in the event you kind of discover that you've been victimized. Local police department, your bank or credit card companies, and adult protective services for your county or area where you live. Again, we've seen a lot of situations where there may have been a small issue, but then because someone was afraid to tell anyone that they fell victim to this, or then it wasn't ended and they didn't put a stop to it because they were just too afraid or embarrassed, and then the problem became much larger until the point that someone else ended up getting involved. So if you find out that you've been the victim of identity theft, place a fraud alert on your credit reports, and that will trigger some essentially extra checks on your identity before making any changes. And when you place that fraud alert, you're entitled to a copy of your credit report so you can check for unauthorized accounts, like we already talked about. Close any accounts that have suspicious activity or that were opened without your permission. This may require you to complete an affidavit of fraud or forgery, and also freeze your credit. The important thing to know with freezing your credit is that you have to freeze it with each company. I would also say if you are at a point in life where you aren't anticipating making any big purchases, perhaps you're settled in your home, you're not going to be applying for any new mortgages, your vehicles are paid for, or you're just not intending to have like a draw on your credit in order to finance a new vehicle or anything like that, just freeze them anyway. You can go and you can freeze all of your accounts even though you haven't been a victim, and then there may be some very small fee if something comes up and you would need to access your credit or have a financial company access your credit. And you can pay a small amount to unfreeze it or to put a little opening on that so that can happen. But if you're in a position where you're not going to be opening any new accounts, just freeze it and you essentially eliminate a very big portion of your risk. So if you have an unlawful use of your credit card or unauthorized charges to your bank account, you can notify the credit card company or bank immediately to have them either cancel the card or put a hold on your account. And if necessary, which in most situations I'm thinking it will be, contact your local law enforcement agency. So a lot of financial institutions are going to require you to file a police report, and they'll want the incident number for that police report. And just know that your local police department in Wisconsin is required to take the report from you for identity theft. So even though the fraudulent charges may be in some other city, some other state, or wherever, your local police department is required to take a report from you as an identity theft victim. So to talk a little bit about what's safer, a credit card or a debit card, spoiler alert, it's a credit card, is safer for protecting your assets. The key difference is that with a credit card, the credit card company has to fight to get their money back if a fraudulent charge occurs. With a debit card, you're fighting to get your money back because it's coming directly out of your account. So again, a fraudulent transaction on a credit card statement, you haven't lost any money yet. You report the fraud, they'll credit that amount to your statement, and you'll never actually pay that amount that you noticed to be fraudulent, and your bank account is never impacted. With a debit card, the moment that fraudulent activity begins occurring, you're losing money, and that money is coming out of your account. And be aware of the domino effect of all of these fraudulent charges may now cause some other auto pay that you have set up to overdraft and cause you to have other issues with the bank and additional fees. So some things that you can do to avoid fraud. Spot imposters. Scammers are often pretending to be someone you trust, and just know not to send money or give out personal information in response to an unexpected request. We're saying that a lot because that's really, some of these things, it's just really make sure that you can protect yourself by doing some pretty simple things. Do online searches. So if you get a phone, like we talked about, a phone call, a text message, something you weren't expecting from maybe a company that you actually use, go online, search it out yourself, check to see if there's a scam tied to it, because a lot of times now with the internet we can get information out about those things, and there may be news stories about different scams going on. Just be aware of the spoof numbers, so you can't always believe your caller ID. Can't always believe that it's that person. So if it's something that seems weird or seems very hurried or rushed, again, take a break, take a breath, and look into it a little bit. Don't pay up front for promises. Again, things like debt relief, credit card, mortgage assistance, prize money, things like that. Don't pay up front. If you do, the odds of recovering that money are very slim, and that person who you gave it to is probably going to disappear. Consider again how you're paying for things. Credit cards have a lot of fraud protection built in, but other payment methods don't. Things like Western Union, MoneyGram, wiring money, it's risky because it's really hard to get your money back, and it's very difficult to track. Also be aware, government offices and honest companies are never going to require you to use MoneyGram or wire transfers, and they're never going to ask for gift cards. We've never asked someone to come down and pay their tickets with iTunes gift cards or something along those lines. Again, talk to someone. If it seems a little off, just ask someone. Call law enforcement. We would much rather come out and talk to you when you think something's a little suspicious than after you know it's a situation where you've been victimized. So before you give that, that information out, ask questions. The goal of the scam is to get you to make decisions in a hurry, to feel threatened, to feel like you're, again, going to lose your Social Security, going to lose your health insurance, things like that. And that's why they're trying to really put that pressure on you to get you to act without thinking. So take a break, think a little bit. A 20-minute phone call to the police department is probably not going to be the difference in something with your Social Security account if it were a legit issue. Hang up on the robocalls. So when you pick up the phone and it's just something about your vehicle's extended warranty, it's a robocall saying this is Social Security, press 1 if to hear more about the issue. Just hang up. Don't hear more about the issue. Don't create a situation where you could fall victim to someone who's a fast talker. Don't deposit a check someone gives you and wire money back to someone. Again, we talked about how the bank will make the money available to you before the likely are going to find out that it's not a real check. So if someone sends you a check saying, hey, cash this and send it back and we'll split it, it's not how it's going to work out in the long run. Again, one of the most important things, and you heard it in those examples that we went through, the real life examples from all over the country, don't ever pay for anything via gift cards unless you have the gift card and you went to the store and you're using a gift card that you already possess. You are never going to pay a fine in gift cards. No company is ever going to release all of these. Why would some company want a bunch of Walmart gift cards as a payment for services rendered? So this slide is a little bit in jest, the way that I put it together, but I just cannot impress upon everyone enough that this will never be a legitimate means of paying for things other than using a gift card at the intended store for their products or services. So seriously, just don't do it. Don't pay for things with gift cards. No government agency will do that. Really, no legitimate business has an interest in some other company's gift cards to pay off a problem that that they've made up for you. And finally, we just want you to have some resources available to you. So again, we talked about requesting free credit reports annually, the do not call registry, and also being able to opt out of credit card offers. If you're local here in the city of Appleton, we have our police department's phone number on here, so you can again contact us. And even if you're worried if something is a scam, that's a very easy situation for us to come out and talk to you and say, yeah, that sounds like a scam. And I can tell you, I'm aware of situations where, both here and in other areas, where people have fallen victim to a scam. We take the report, we tell them this is a scam. Please, don't engage in any more of this behavior, and not long after we'll be back there because they're just convinced for whatever reason that this is real, that there's really some lottery winnings on the other end, that it's really just taking a long time to play out. Some of these scams are carried out over months and months and months of people sending money and losing money trying to obtain these millions of dollars that they believe that they're entitled to through a lottery that they never knowingly entered. So again, please call us, call your local police department if you're not in Appleton and you're worried about a scam or worried about having fallen victim to a scam. The sooner that you get a hold of us, the sooner that you put an end to it, the less likely the extremity of your losses is going to be high. And also, I guess, if there is any chance of recovering any funds or things of that nature, then the sooner we can get on that, the better our chances are. But it's important to know that the odds of recovering those funds in a lot of cases are very, very low. So with that, I don't have anything else. So if you have further questions, you can always contact the police department. We can get back to you at a later date if you have questions when you view this. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Stark with the Carolyn Stark Real Estate Team. I just want to say thank you to Sergeant Matt for joining us today and giving us some great information. Thank you.